You have fertilizer, which should be going on a regular basis. And then that's really just the fields. The grounds around the schools should be mowed on a regular basis. We have hedges or other things that should be trimmed and maintained. Those should be fertilized and maintained.
Fall and spring cleanup.
You have weeding.
My point was that there's nothing to do out there in the winter other than remove snow and put down sand.
And, yeah,
Right?
Correct.
Keep the
I think
walkways open, yeah.
I think my sense was in our discussion with this
And
particular organization is that was one of the places where they might bank hours, okay, for some of that weekend work, okay? But they also might bring that person into a school so that they're another custodian in a school or something like that.
Could they do off-season work or any projects that,
On the outside, there's
no, I'm saying,
Yeah.
once it snows, they can come inside to do
Right, yes, yes.
now you've got people to come inside to do
Correct.
inside projects.
And I got the impression from the contractor we've kind of been working with to try and develop this plan, is that, again, it would be a combination of maybe doing some work that was needed just inside, but also it might be that person, wouldn't be used, but 3/4 of the year, those hours would be banked to be used for some of those other things.
It's
that would be
important for the
needed.
public to understand too that the fields aren't all of a sudden going to look like plush grass and beautiful.
No.
I mean, the big reason why a lot of those things that you just mentioned haven't been done is because the timing of to do it has never been available because of the usage on
It's
those fields.
constant.
So,
Right.
let's not get people thinking
mean,
all of a sudden, we're going to have
Well, I'll be even more blunt.
plush green, beautiful fields.
If
out
you
there.
want plush green fields, okay, every single field, with the possible exception of the Pearly field, needs to be seeded, fertilized,
Right.
aerated, and
We
live
don't have time to do
fallow.
that because we play on them every single Saturday.
And live
Sunday,
fallow, and
Monday,
not be
Wednesday,
used
Friday.
for 2 years.
Yeah, well, it's
Well,
cheaper to
then,
turf it.
then why don't you just not let them use it for, I know you've got to make a tough stance on these fields if we're going to lose them,
Not
or
let,
use them.
who use what?
The GAA.
They don't use,
No, it's not just the
Let you use
GAA.
what?
football field's the biggest problem, and the GAA doesn't use that.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying it's just delay the start of some of the
Lacrosse,
season.
soccer, you have
that's
a lot
all.
of sports that are playing.
I know, it's a whole different
It's a different discussion, yeah.
But
I
while
just don't
we're,
want people hearing that all of a sudden we get all these services and we're going to have these amazing fields.
No, I think one of the things is we're not, with this, we're not losing services, but we are actually gaining some.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Absolutely gaining.
We're not losing anything.
Right.
This is
Absolutely.
not,
somebody's not gonna have to leave cleaning the school to go out and mow because the football game's tomorrow and start lining the fields, right?
Right.
We'll have
No, I
people
think
to
it
do that.
depends on how you
Correct.
define it with the
schedule.
Right.
God,
Well, you
I'll be
have it out of your
disappointed.
13 FTEs there.
Yeah,
that
somebody will be able to do it.
There'll be more time for people to do that,
I
yeah.
don't know. I think it's a scheduling question.
And we've talked so much about, Peter Durkee's department. How much input has he had into this? Has he been involved in all these discussions? Because it seems to me that we're talking about using all of his tools and all of everything else. He should
Well,
be involved in.
Well, that just came up tonight.
Yeah, that's still one of those pieces that's still in progress. And
Because what does his department does a lot for the schools anyway. I know that he must do a lot. I mean, obviously he does everything for the roads and everything else, but he goes above and beyond, I know, at the schools with the plowing and the shoveling and the clearing and the getting guys in there when we need them, and
And this might actually provide an opportunity where Peter's guys now are not spending the time that they'd be spending at the schools, spending more time on the roads and loosen up some of his time to do some of the work that needs to be done on the rest of the infrastructure in town.
but he's not been, has he seen this? Does it have,
I don't know.
okay. That's my only other question at this point. All right, are you here? I personally don't feel like we're prepared to vote on this tonight. We haven't read it. I would like to see.
Was the expectation was that we voted on this tonight? No.
Well, let me just ask a procedural question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's more of a timing question than anything else, right? So, let's say the school committee agrees in concept that this is, this is needed, okay? And the town meeting you have a meeting on the 28th,
Correct.
right? Which you mentioned maybe coming, or Terry, or somebody would talk about this energy
I'll be
management
representing the
contract.
Energy Committee.
Right. Then, of course, we have town meeting, right, that comes up. So, at town meeting, people are going to be asked to vote whether or not this goes to the ballot, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, let's say it's voted to go forward, right,
To the ballot.
to the ballot. And then let's say it passes, okay? And of course, there isn't a, as required by law, an agreement between the town and the schools to go forward with such a department. I'm guessing that if there was a mandate from the town that this was necessary, right, that.
Through a
it-
ballot
Through a
vote.
ballot vote.
Okay.
But it's
that
not a
the-
department.
That the school, well, it's not a department, but the school committee might be more inclined then to say, well, let's look at what a memorandum of agreement could look like, right? Because the town said it, you know, we want this, right?
You were talking
Can
about
it go
what, May
forward?
10th?
May 9th.
May 9th.
And that's
Well, May
election.
9th is election
He'd be
day.
ready to go on May
May 9th
10th.
is the election, and then you meet on the 12th?
12th.
You meet on the
12th,
12th. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, if the committee didn't vote on this before town meeting, that doesn't mean it can't be brought before the voters, right? Or does it? Because,
Technically not, but you would be putting
mean-
the voters through
Well,
the
they don't,
exercise.
know what I
They're
mean?
gonna wanna know what you guys think of it on town floor, town meeting
Right.
floor.
And also, I think you guys would want to know also from what the townspeople want too.
Right.
Because you're also making a decision not just for the schools, but for the towns at this point too.
Exactly.
Right.
so, based on Terry's estimates, I guess, that the schools are gonna net about 300,000, is that what you're saying, out of this 729,000?
More or less, I can certainly nail down an exact figure for you for the next meeting.
But going for, I mean, okay.
That's a pretty important figure.
It is, because we're
Yeah.
talking, I mean,
Absolutely do
that's a
that.
$500,000 cut.
I think the challenge,
Cuts,
you
I mean,
know,
it's
the
hard
elephant
to-
on the table, obviously, is the schools need an override for the operations, and the town needs, you know, there needs to be a maintenance.
Completely understand.
Because,
So the two compete, and that's where it's tricky.
and I think if we net 3 to 350 out of this whole thing, we're looking at actually netting only half of that because historically we've spent $140,000
Well, that's part of what I'll do, when I do my
in
estimate for you, I'll
unanticipated.
try
So
to-
we ended up netting
Try to estimate what is not, what I don't think is covered here.
$150,000.
Well, there's two things. One is you're right, that number
Right.
is about, let's say it's 350, right, whatever,
Right.
and we'll finalize that. But you also got a heck of a lot more people taking care of your buildings.
Right, but we
That's
So
true, Phil.
so it's not just, I completely understand your point, right? It's, okay, what do we support? Do we support our override that we wanted to put forth at 1.2 million to fund the schools adequately for the educational purpose, which, as the school committee, I think is
Have
your
to do
first
that.
and foremost in
Little
your
bigger
mind?
priority, right.
Right.
Completely understand that, versus, okay, do we support 1.2, which we know we do because we voted on that, or do I look at a $350,000 gain, which means I would still lose about $500,000 to make up that gap, right? What you're saying?
Well,
But
more,
when I
no, it'd be
actually-
more, if
when
we
you net-
factor in the 130 average, we're down, you know,
With
then we're
those
up at
on
almost
top,
700.
right.
So I net 200.
So I completely understand. And the other thing is the other benefit to this is that we're actually maintaining and preventatively maintaining the building. So
We're
it's a
improving
tough,
also.
and it's a tough decision for you
Right.
guys. I clearly
We're in
understand
a
that.
bad position.
Well,
We've
for
been
the
put in a
town-
bad
yeah.
position.
I think everyone's in a tough, challenging
Yeah.
position, right? Not everybody in town supports throwing money at schools. Not everyone in town supports throwing money at maintenance. Not everyone in town supports
No.
throwing money at anything right now.
And the biggest challenge we're going to have is if neither of these pass.
Right.
Okay, so I think
That
it's,
is gonna be a
right
challenge.
now, it's just, this is definitely miles ahead of where we were years ago in talking about this. I mean, I want to commend Terry and Mike right now, because they've done a great job in pulling this together and getting the information, and seeing what's out there to find out what the options are, as opposed to saying, okay, let's just keep limping along. And hope that we don't have to freeze the budget in October, hope we can get to December to freeze the budget. So, I mean, that is definitely one
We're
of,
usually frozen by August.
right.
lately.
But I mean, this is one of the things with this maintenance, is that this is beneficial. This particular override is absolutely something that people can see, and is beneficial to all of the town buildings as a whole. It's very important, the 1.2 is very important for the school system, and it takes care of the school system, but it doesn't touch into it doesn't solve issues that are all still in town.
Right.
And that's
Right.
one of the ideas behind this one, is that this actually resolves some problems townwide that we've been experiencing for 10-plus years.
Yeah.
And it's just, and people always
Started
say,
cutting
I
at
don't
the
want to just
school level
throw.
in '02, we've been
But I
cutting
think,
in the
but I
town
think,
since
I
then
think
too.
the challenge, I mean,
It
there
is absolutely a challenge, yeah.
The reality of the situation is, and again, it's nobody's fault, but it is what it is.
It
okay?
is.
And I don't disagree with
Yeah.
a single
No,
thing
in
you just
principle,
said,
it's-
Sandy.
it's-
Absolutely
absolutely.
don't disagree with a single,
Right.
but let's just say for the schools that we get 350 out of this, right? And yes, what you said, Phil, is true. We maybe have more people available to help clean and do all that.
More preventive.
The bottom line next year, though, is that's half of what we need. So we will be making $300,000 worth of cuts to the list that the school committee tried to save, right?
Yep.
In addition to that, we will be charging bus fees to children. In addition to that, the sports and activity fees are going to be at
$500 to
far-
$600.
You know,
Through the roof.
Yeah, not
With
not
no
a,
family
not
cap.
a, not a reasonable expectation. So I think that's if you hear any reservation, it's not. I don't think the schools are trying to be selfish. It's just the reality for us next year is that we have children that are going to be in the schools, and you know, and our life is going to change dramatically. Yes, it's going to improve the town. We agree, and it will be a benefit to the schools on some level. Understood, but it is hard to try to think about how we face those kind of situations
I don't think,
next
it-
year.
for you
without
guys, I
knowing,
don't
right?
think it's that difficult of a decision. I know what your decision should be for yourselves, right? If I were on the school committee, I would be fighting to get the funding for the schools in itself right
Right.
now. And figure out how the chips may fly on the maintenance
and-
stuff. I completely
And I don't think it's a selfish thing.
understand.
We want to do the best for the whole town. We'd love it if the town could see its way
Well,
to
that's why we
fund both,
wanted a $2 million
right?
override jointly. That's, I mean,
And
but
we,
that's a whole nother discussion.
And I can tell you, the support for that was almost nil for,
I know.
for a lot of individuals,
It's
boards,
a-
committees, and folks up there.
Yeah, it's a
And this
very
was hopefully a way that we could, now the numbers have shifted. I think in the spirit of the original conversation, we were looking at $500,000 to you. At least I was when we made our vote.
That's what we
Yeah,
thought
Right,
we
too.
so we were
We had
hoping,
500, yeah.
we were hoping that
Which would help a
$500,000, and I'm not gonna speak in the for my committee or the finance committee, I'll speak for myself. As an individual, when I voted for the override to go onto the town warrant for the maintenance, we talked about a number that was over $500,000.
And we thought we could close that gap to 650 and there was some-
And that's not the number now. We've gotten a little bit more definitive and clear on that. So it's a harder decision for you. It's an easier decision for you guys, and it's a harder decision for us to support one or the other. So
Right.
completely understand where you guys are coming from on this, and I think this was a good discussion we had to have this
Oh,
evening.
I appreciate that.
And
Chance.
Mike.
we thank you so
in
much.
2 weeks, it's amazing what you and Terry pulled together.
really
so
is.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
all
you
the
so much.
information.
And
That
it's
was really
actually, this
helpful.
is the right direction for the
Yeah,
town to go. There's no
it
doubt
really
about
is.
that. There's no-
We need
Yeah,
it.
conceptually, it's where we need to be.
Right.
And our meeting
just-
on the 28th, I'm expecting all 5 of us here
Oh,
today.
That's
So-
good.
Can you keep these so they can go in the packets for the
Sure.
next meeting?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for tonight?
No, but I'm sure Terry will have a lot for you in the next couple weeks.
One of the things I think we want to mention while we're on TV, a couple of items. Mike has done a tax calculator.
Oh, good.
On the
People have been
website.
asking.
Oh, okay.
Do you want
So
to
that's
describe
on
it,
the-
or do you
is
want
that
me
on
to,
the
or
site?
what would you?
Well, it's up there on the town website. It's, depending upon your operating system and your computer, it can be a little bulky. It asks you different questions, but there's basically 3 steps. The instructions are there once you get it on your screen. And you just have to put in the amount. There's two variables. You put in the amount of the override, 1.2 or 729.
Or
and you-
2 million?
the
Combination,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And then you put in the value, the assessed value of your house, and it will.
And if you don't know that, you can find that online too.
You can go on, to the assessing
It's right there.
page and look it up.
Well,
So-
for people that don't know, so they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between assessed and market, so you'd hate for
And if
people
you
that-
run it again, because the last time you ran it, you said a $400,000 house would be about 377. Is that still? Or I've heard it's gone down to 340 something, but I don't know.
No, no, I think this guy ran mine, and it was
The average.
just under 4.
The mean valuation in Georgetown, whatever that number is, it was
379.
under $400 a year.